I feel like I was always battling myself. I was kind of having my own internal battle of like, I like doing the podcast. I like actually speaking to people. I like having the conversations. I like being able to go off the top here with you guys. I don't plan these things. I don't write them. This is me just like, I have a general idea of what I want to talk about and I just kind of riff. And I felt like I was always battling something. I felt like I was always just self-conscious about stuff. I was definitely self-conscious. Especially like, I'd post something and like I would, I have some hot takes, man. I'm passionate and I believe in what I'm saying. And sometimes I'm going to say something that I know might piss some people off. And I get self-conscious about it. And so a number of those things have all kind of played into the fact on why I just really just didn't post and I didn't feel like it. And I had recorded some and scrapped them. And, I recorded like a bunch of them and scrapped them. And eventually I just stopped recording them. I mean, this is literally my first time even attempting to record a new podcast in probably a couple months at least. So yeah, it's been a weird long hiatus and I never intended to take this long. But I think the things that I've found and the things that I've learned about myself in this time has been really important. And one of the things that I recently watched, it's called Becoming Nobody. It's a documentary about Ram Dass, and it features an interview with him back when he could speak better. He had like strokes and stuff, so his speech kind of towards the end of his life was not as coherent and a lot harder to kind of get through. But I was watching that, and he talked about this concept of somebodyness and the concept of becoming nobody. And I thought this concept was really important to me because oftentimes, we get into certain things based on the somebodyness of that thing, right? So some people become lawyers because they want people to be like, ooh, you're a lawyer. Or like, some people become doctors because they're like, ooh, you're a doctor. Like, and like your parents might push you to that of like, ooh, my son is a doctor. My son's a lawyer, whatever the fuck it is. And we often use this, it's very egoic motivation. And it's not necessarily true to who you are. It's not necessarily true to like yourself. It's not true to like your higher being at all. And it is purely for the vanity. And I started thinking, I'm like, well, am I doing this podcast because I want the vanity of it? That I want to be, ooh, you're a podcaster. Ooh, you're a YouTuber. Like, is that why I was doing it? And on some level, yeah, probably. I've always grounded this podcast in that I genuinely want to provide an insight or a perspective that people don't hear. So that's always been like at the root of it. That's always been it. But then another thing that comes with that is like the exclusive knowledge thing, right? Like, ooh, I'm going to share some shit with you that you don't know, And so it's like, ooh, I'm an in crowd. Come into my in crowd with me. You're a heavy mommy now, And I think I wasn't fully honest with myself about the motivations of that, right? Of that I was seeking validation through you all. I was seeking validation from you all to say, yes, Kevin, what you're doing is important. Yes, Kevin, you're doing a good job. Yes, Kevin, I really admire you. Yes, Kevin, like all of those things. And those things are really superficial and they were never going to fulfill me. They were never going to make me happy. And I think that's where when the schedule became stressful for me and it was hard for me to meet deadlines, and then I would push back things or I'd procrastinate purely based on the fear of having to meet the deadline. I was like scared. I was scared that I was like not going to be able to post in time, or that I wasn't going to meet the deadline that I set for myself, which was an arbitrary date. And it just was toxic. It just was not good for me, and the way that I described it to one of my friends was that it was like I was driving around with holes in my tires. And so what I would do is I would drive around and eventually I would hit rim at some point. And it wouldn't be right away. It would be a slow leak. And then when I would hit rim, I would realize like, damn, like I need to take a minute. I need to stop and I need to reinflate the tires. And so I would reinflate the tires, but I never patched up the tire. It was still leaking, still had a hole in it, but I would reinflate it and it would go for a little bit and I'd drive for a couple miles and then I'd break down again and then I would go and I'd fill it up again and then I'd drive for a couple miles. And it was like this endless cycle of me just like, running on an energy that wasn't unlimited and running on an energy that really wasn't sustainable. It was just not even the right kind of energy. It wasn't the right kind of motivation. And I've been close to understanding this numerous times. I've known that I've dealt with burnout, and I've known that I need to do this because I love doing it and not because of, wanting it to be an escape from a regular job or, whatever. And it wasn't. I wasn't honest about it. I wasn't honest about it with you all, but I also wasn't honest about it with myself. I didn't even know. You know what I mean? So it's like I wasn't honest with you guys, but it was really because I wasn't even honest with myself. And I think now I'm understanding, and I don't know that I have the answers or that I'm even like, I don't even know that I know what to do yet, but I know for sure that I'm having more clarity around the actual reality of my situation and the reality of how I'm feeling. So that is why I have not posted in a while. And I that's why I've always had that problem where I'll post for a little bit and then I'll run out of gas and then it takes forever for me to start back up again. So I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to release on a specific schedule. I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to be consistent or regular with this. I'm not going to promise you anything. I'm not going to promise you anything, and I'm not going to promise myself anything. I want to do this stuff because I want to do it, and I want to do it when I want to do it. And I want to be more forgiving of the fact that I do have a full-time job, and I do have a life outside of this, and I have a girlfriend, and I have to make sure that, I'm living life to the fullest. I want to appreciate all aspects of life. And for too long, based on this idea of somebodiness, I was identifying with what I did. I identified as, I'm a podcaster. I'm a YouTuber. And that's not who you are. You are not what you do. You are the sum of all the actions that you might take in various situations, for sure. You could certainly make the argument that, you are what you do repeatedly, but you are not your career. And your value and your sense of self-worth is not based off of that. And for too long, it was for me. I was basing my self-worth and I was basing my value based off of whether I had been making content and posting it, which is like, when I say it out loud, I'm like, dude, you're an idiot, but it makes sense, right? Because for my desire to be somebody, I'm doing this stuff and it's something that makes me special, right? I'm making content, I'm doing something unique, I'm carving out my little cut on the internet, and it gives me some semblance of uniqueness, some semblance of being special. And what really fucks people up is that from a young age, people can tell you that you're going to be something. And although that is an encouraging thing on the surface, it's actually creating an expectation. And it is creating this idea in your head that, for example, I was in gifted, whatever that means. I was put in the gifted classes. That doesn't mean shit in my eyes, but I was put in the gifted classes, and in the gifted classes, there's an expectation that you're gifted, that you're smart, you're a genius or whatever the fuck. And, that's based off of somebody's metrics, and maybe some of those metrics have some merit to them on where maybe you are really good at pattern recognition, or maybe you really are good at math or science or whatever. But that doesn't represent you as a whole. That doesn't represent your entirety of your being. That is certainly an aspect of your intelligence, but there's many different forms of intelligence, and not all of them are going to be scholastic. So for me, at a young age, I was told I was gifted, and people would tell me I'm smart, and people would validate my intelligence because I spoke eloquently, or because I do have good grasps of various subjects, and so I can appear to be this intelligent person, and sometimes I'll drop some wisdom for you all, and so people will be like, oh, well, you're wise, you're smart, or whatever, and they're gassing up this projection of me that then I am internalizing within myself. I'm like internalizing like, oh yeah, I am, maybe I am this, just because people told me it and it made me feel good, and like part of that was because when I was a kid and I was being bullied in elementary school, that they made me feel like I was less than. They made me feel like I wasn't good enough. So when people would tell me that I was good enough, that like gave me validation, and that gave me a reason to believe like, oh, I am something. Those people who made fun of me when I was a kid, they were wrong. See, all these other people recognize my value. And I was basing my value off of those things. And it wasn't even conscious. Like, and I like to think I'm a pretty introspective person. I think about these things. I'm always going on the internal stuff to the point where it's to my detriment. I overthink these things. And in the process of recognizing my seeking validation and my desire for somebodyness, I am now understanding that, one, that was never going to make me happy, and that was obviously like a false god to be chasing. But another thing is that I am not even those things. Like those things that people told me that I am, they don't necessarily know. That was just their perception based on a moment with me. They shared a moment with me, and based on that moment, they were able to make a conclusion that they drew about me, and then projected it onto me, and then I would accept that and I would internalize it, and then that became a part of me and I would identify with it. And I think all of those things are really easy traps to get into. It's very much a human thing. I don't even fault myself for it, because I understand that in our culture, we are always trying to be a somebody, right? America's all about that. Like America's all about like, go be a millionaire, go be rich and whatever. And I think that's part of our sickness in our culture too, is that we worship celebrities and this somebodyness, and we overly emphasize the elites in our country or the scientists, or and I love scientists. I believe in science. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying that like, we hype certain people up. We hype up lawyers, we hype up doctors, we hype up scientists, we hype up important people, we hype up media people, we hype up a lot of different types of people, and we actually disparage other people, right? Essential workers. We learned who the essential workers are in the COVID-19 crisis. We now understand that some of the most important people are the people that you thought, weren't good enough to wipe your ass. Now, I never had that view. I understand working class people. I'm a working class person. My parents are working class people, but I do understand that there is a mentality of like, some people believe that they are better than other people, and they believe that, your grocery worker or your average retail worker, whatever, is less than you. And we've now learned that like, without those motherfuckers, you wouldn't get your shit. You wouldn't have your food. You wouldn't be able to survive. And although we're still not paying them enough money, I think at least on some level our society has had to reckon with that. The reality is that some of the people that we rely on are the people who are some of the hardest workers who don't make any money, who don't make nearly enough money for the amount of work that they put in. So I think for me, learning these lessons has been really important, and it's what allowed me to even be able to record this episode right now. I've come to grips with that. I do want to make this content, but I don't want to feel pressured about it, and I don't want to be overwhelmed with it. I want to truly enjoy it for what it is. I want to enjoy the process. This should be fun, dude. This is my creative outlet. I like to be able to talk and talk about these ideas that, I want to put it out in the universe and get feedback and have a dialogue and a conversation. And I'd love to like have you guys, respond in the comments and say, hey, I listened to this and I really thought about that, or whatever. Like, I want an engagement. I want to build a community here. When I say, what up, heavy mommies, I'm trying to create heavy mommies. I want the heavy mommies to be this awesome community of like-minded individuals who want to better themselves, who want to learn new things, who want to go deep and do the work introspectively and, discover who they are. And I'm never going to be somebody who's going to provide you answers. I'm going to ask questions out loud that I'm asking about myself, and hopefully those questions prompt your own questions for yourself, right? We all have our own questions and we all have our own answers, and we can learn from other people's questions and answers, but we have to understand that, you know, we have our own stuff that only we're going to be able to figure out, you know? So for me, I think it's really important that I am doing something creative, but I think it's also really important that I don't treat it like a job. Because at the end of the day, this isn't a job. It doesn't make me any money, you know? I'm doing this because I enjoy doing something creative. I like using my equipment. I like using the camera and the microphones and all that. I just enjoy it. I enjoy the production process. But I don't like the marketing, which is the businessy part of it. And I don't like you know, the uploading, and to be honest, editing a podcast is not that fun. I'd much rather edit a film. Editing a film at least has some, like, you got to be creative, but editing a podcast is pretty, like, you know, this, for example, this is like a one take, one shot. You know, the only editing that I'm doing for this episode is gonna be you know, finding clips and taking little segments out. So yeah, so it's been a minute. That's what's going on with me.